Hi, this is a quick video on how to do keyword research for SEO. This is how to make your website and some of the things you do searchable on Google and other websites for absolutely free. So you spend less money marketing and more time and energy doing some of the other things with your money and with your finances, and also keeping more profit in your pocket if you're not spending money on ads. One of the easiest tools that's around, and it's absolutely free. There's a lot of people that will try to get you to pay for this, but you can do this research absolutely free and it takes very little time. But if you type in Google Keyword Planner, don't do the top one because these are people that will give you a little bit of information, but for the most part they're trying to get you to pay for it, even though they have a good program. Don't want to talk negatively, but it's this one right here, this Keyword Ads Planner for Google. It's their planner that you use if you're going to do paid Google ads, which if that's within your budget, I have another video on how to find the best, lowest cost ads using the same tool. But we won't waste your time on this. This is about how to get the biggest bang for your buck as far as your time spent writing blog articles or doing anything on your website, how to get the most searchability. This is what I use here. It's find new keywords. You can do some other things, but I wanted to do an example. This is how I was able to get over 50,000 a month free visitors from the different search engines, is using some of these strategies and actually producing content based on the research that I found. In just a bit, I'm going to go through 5 tips of the things that you can get the biggest reach for the least amount of work by using this tool. So just as an example, just because this is an area that I'm in, I wrote some healthy menu plans at different calorie levels. And so I was going for very specific keywords, and a lot of them had to do around like a 1,500 calorie diet. So if your niche is health or weight loss or anything in that, but don't worry about the keywords I'm using, think of it on how and what you would use. But I just want to go through this keyword tool really quickly as far as how to read it. It's usually going to come up with your exact keywords on top, the exact volume of searches that that keyword gets. This is the average cost per click. That's what CPC means if you're not familiar with that. And typically this is not the average of these two numbers over here. This is the low range, this is the high range. This adjusts per day, per bid cost. So on average, you're going to pay about 80 cents per click if you're advertising on here. But I won't spend much time on that because this is not that video. This competition US, typically if it's less than 0.3 or 0.4, it's considered a low competitive keyword. Now, that typically means how many sites are trying to rank for this word. And this is percentage based on the range. So it's kind of like grading on a curve a little bit. So there may be, if something's a 0.1 competition, there could be 25 million sites competing for this keyword or that comes up within the search in this. Something that's a medium or 0.5 or 0.6 could have a billion sites that have this keyword in it that is being searched by Google. I tend to avoid things in the medium to high range. If you have a budget and or a staff of writers, this is a great thing to start going after, but it wouldn't be the first thing for a first-time blogger or somebody with a very low budget and or is very busy and just doesn't have time to produce a ton of articles. And there's ways that you can actually rank for this keyword without actually focusing on this keyword, and I'm going to tell you that in the tips. But just to go through each one of these columns. Now, in this, you are only able to filter or sort by these categories over here because your average monthly search, it groups these. So if you sort by average monthly search, it's going to go from top to bottom. And in this category, it doesn't look like there's any high. One thing in this category, you'll look here, there's almost 1,000 keyword ideas. And most of these keyword searches you do, you'll get about 1,000 keyword ideas. One of the things that's a real key when you're doing this is not to focus on the entire 1,000 that you're looking at, because you can spend all day, you can spend days trying to figure out what keywords. I want to give you some quick tips to focus down on the keywords that are going to help you the most, the quickest. And one of those things is using this little filter key. It can get you into that range really quickly. So if we want to avoid all the medium ones, let's look at the competition and only look at the lows. For a beginning blogger or somebody with a low budget, really this is all you should be looking at, because you can get a tremendous amount of traffic just focusing on ones that have less than 1 billion sites competing for that keyword. So on something like this, this has a lot of different diets. Even though I typed in a calorie diet, basically anything with the word diet or weight loss is going to come up in this search. So it depends on if that works with your industry. Sometimes you think, oh, well, this is a low keyword but high traffic. Let's go after this. But if you look on the competitive scale, it's twice as competitive, almost 6 times as competitive as something like healthy foods. So even though healthy foods only has half the traffic or less than half the traffic, it's much less competitive as far as somebody going after that. So this would be a really good one to write an article on it, and probably I'm going to make a note to look into more research on that, because a lot of traffic, again, very low competition on this specific. But I'll tell you even better to get into that niche. One, we want to go a little more closely related. Again, we're over 700. This gets us down to about 100 keywords, which is something that's a little more reasonable. And this is one thing that's interesting right here that I love kind of looking at, is if you just add one more word to this, you don't get as much traffic, but it's actually more competitive. So one of the things, they talk a lot about long tail keywords, and generally long tail keywords are anything that's 4 keywords or more. And I recommend doing a batch of 4 to 6 keywords. You can do longer, but in general, if you do between 4 to 6, you'll be able to get a broader range and a little more ease of getting some of that traffic. So we want to kind of go through this. So if we're going a little more close related, so in other words, it's going to keep that entire keyword phrase within the keywords that it's coming up with. And so that's why it's only 100. But again, it's 139 still, and it's getting some of that. But what I like to do, here's my first tip, and this is where I've got a lot of page 1 rankings, is I look in here, even though I can't sort it by volume, there's this little export down here. If you export it to a CV or CSV and then import it into Excel, you can sort by this column, and I highly recommend that for ease of use. But if there's over 100, if there's less than 100, usually you can just scroll through. But actually, I like to look for keyword phrases that are low competition, which means there's less sites competing for it, but have between 10 to 100 searches a month. So these are volume of searches per month. So something right here, it's a very low on the competition, meaning there's very little amount of sites doing blog posts with this exact keyword phrase, but there's 100 people a month searching for this exact keyword phrase. So that would be something that you would be able to rank number 1 for 8 times easier than ranking for this one with the same search volume. So that's tip number 1, is don't go after the big guys. Don't go after these large volume keywords. You may sit at page 20, 30, 40 for years before you're even able to get to page 3 doing this keyword, which I know you're thinking the volume, but anybody on page 2 is getting maybe 5 to 10% of that. Everybody on page 1 is getting 90% of that. But on something like this, I'd rather get 100% of 100 than 0.01% of 8,000. So think of it that way. Think of this as your score as far as how easy it is to get to page 1. And if it's less than 0.1, it is 10 times easier to get to a page 1 ranking with a decent article with this, this word. So it's really good to know these numbers. Again, these are the exact same number of people that search for this exact phrase each month, but this is 8 times harder to get to page 1 than this one. So really think about that when you're going through. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is do 4 to 6 keywords. Tip number 3 is don't go after these big boys up here. Tip number 4, this is one that has skyrocketed my search. It's use these keywords in your images. On average, only 10% of websites that are ranking for these keywords have images ranking for these keywords. So you may be on page 2 or 3 with your blog article the first month, 2 months with something like this, maybe page 10. You may be able to get to an image at page 1 the first week using this term. So it's really important to title your images with these keywords. That is a huge tip. Title your images. Make sure you have some description in your images, because when somebody clicks on those images, it goes to that page that image was put to. So image SEO search is greatly important, and you can get to page 1 on images 10 times quicker than you can get to page 1 on entire blog posts, because a lot of people that actually have these keywords in their blog posts don't necessarily have them on their images. So it's really important, and that can get you to page 1 quicker. So tip number 5 is filter, filter, filter. Use these filters so that you're not looking at 100 keywords. Export it, pull it into Excel. If you like digging into data, there is a lot of data there. So I want to do something that's more on the lines of online marketing. So if you're in a different niche, so let's do something broad like online marketing. You have to do the search results. And this gives you, of course, a whole different thing. Now let's take off our filters and see how many are available on that. Let's not do closely related. Let's do broadly related. So if you want to kind of go through this and see all the things that are available, there's over 800 different terms that are broadly related to online marketing. The broadly related is a really good thing if you are kind of open-ended as far as what you think your keywords might be. As you grow and as you determine your subject matter, this gets a little more refined. But if you're looking for categories on your website or things that relate to your field of interest or field of expertise, this is a great place to actually look at what are the biggest categories in this industry. It's really good to think if you are in online marketing, a good category might be international marketing, might be email marketing, things like that. So another tip, this is besides the top 5, is, so make a list of topics that you might want to discuss, and then make a list of categories. And within those categories, maybe look what the keywords are for that category. So if you're doing online marketing, again, I wouldn't focus on the highest volume there is available. I would definitely filter first by competition. And sometimes that gets us down to 400 keywords. We can do a little more closely related, but this may be enough to get us down to something we can sort and filter. Again, exporting it and searching by volume of between 10 and 100 is a really good thing, or 10 and 200. I will say this category typically starts at 10. So 10 might actually be 0. So I'd want to make sure it's above 10. But if you're searching by volume, I kind of like to skirt this range. So when it's 1,000 to 10,000, this is a great thing if you find something that's not very competitive, like in this category. There's almost 2,000 searches a month, but very little competition. Again, though, if I say very little competition, it may be only 2 million blogs versus 20 million blog posts. So that's somewhat of a relative term when you're talking in this industry. But I kind of like to stay in the 100 to 1K category, or even the less than 100 category, because there's so much less. So inner marketing, there's actually almost 500 people a month searching this keyword term, and almost nobody's writing blog articles specifically on that term. Now, one of the funny thing is sometimes searches are misspelled words, and it's not a bad marketing strategy to write a blog post and purposely misspell something if you know there's searchability. Don't do it in a general thing. But if this is something that, you know, this could have had a space or hyphen, but the search doesn't, it's not a bad thing to try to rank for. Now, when I'm talking about SEO, I'm talking about good blog articles or good information that serve a purpose and actually fill a need of who's ever reading it. I'm not talking about stacking post or bad SEO practices where it's basically keyword stuffing. Google has a lot of robots out there. It may work for a week, but you're not going to maintain that ranking for very long. I'm just kind of searching through here on some of these lower ones. Like I said, this would be something that I would not even bother wasting my time doing an article on, because even if it says 10 to 100, it starts out at 10. There's no competition for it because nobody's searching for it. Make sure it's above 10. That'll save you a whole lot of time and grief. Something like this to me is funny because there's almost nobody searching for it, but it's highly competitive. Apparently it was. One of the things is this has its highs and lows. Something that may have been highly competitive or something that may have had a lot of searches on it 2 to 5 years ago doesn't have any today. So it's good to watch the trends. And there was another search engine on the front end right before we looked at this that can help you out with that. One other tip that I love, and it's again going back into the competition and using that 4 to 6 keywords, is because if you're in the 4 to 6 keywords, let's take this one. It's got 140 searches a month. It's not that competitive. I'm trying to see if there's a better example. That's probably the best example. It's search engine optimization strategies. Now, the reason 4 to 6 keywords is so amazing for your SEO is because you actually get ranking for these two keywords, optimization strategies, engine optimization strategies, search engine optimization. They have several keyword searches within that 4-word key search. So even though you may be able to rank for page 1 or 2 on this, you'll probably be also ranking on a page 3 or 4 for any given one of those other combinations of keywords. So it's really good to stay in the 4 to 6 keyword phrase group because you get the most bang for your buck of all your efforts to get strategies. So I really hope this video helped, gave you some insight, gave you some ideas, and helped you find a keyword that you can actually get to page 1 or 2 for a lot quicker than if you were just randomly selecting ideas. Thanks.